So, my last two questions, I guess, are more in relation to some insights or tips, or maybe a little bit of advice you can give kids or teachers. So I'll start with teachers and parents. So I'll start with my first one. So, as you probably know, because you work a lot with young kids, as well as parents, teachers, and childcare workers. There are many young kids out there who are really struggling to find their own path, like struggling to get on purpose. So, what suggestions can you give or share that you found or that you've uncovered that you can share or I guess give to them to help them get on track?
I've created a process with my father called Creating Your Life Vision. And I believe, and this is what I've learned and I've put heavily into practice in my own life, is that what we're looking for, what we want, is not actually what we want. So I believe we've confused the what with the how. So for example, somebody in their younger years will say, well, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, and why? Well, I want the house, I want the car, I want the vacations, I want the family, I want the really bright, shiny career, I want the promotions, I want the good grades, I want the results. We're really thinking that the what, that's what we want. But I think we've got it backwards. I believe that all of those things that I just listed is how it's going to show up in our lives. So you don't want to be a doctor, you don't want to be a lawyer, you don't want to be an archaeologist, you don't want to be a speaker, you don't want to be a child care facilitator, you don't want to be a teacher. That's not what you want. That's how it's going to show up in your life. What you want is how all of those are going to make you feel. Mm-hmm. So what you want is the underlying feelings. You want to feel significant. You want to feel powerful. You want to feel happy. You want to feel fulfilled. You want to feel love. You want to feel all of those things. Those feelings, those what you call the core feelings, is what you want. And so the more we focus on the how or the old what, the more we're actually limiting our ability to live on purpose, the more we're actually limiting our ability to even discover our purpose. And what happens is it's like we're living with blinders on, and we miss all of this stuff that's going on over here because we're so focused. It's like, well, I want to be a doctor, so what happens to be a doctor? Well, I've got to go to university, then I got to go to med school, then I got to do residency, then I got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to get $300,000 in debt, then I got to pay off that debt, then I got to do this. And then you finally get there, and most of the time, you're often quite unsatisfied because the result was really not what you're looking for because it didn't bring you the feeling that you're looking for.
Right.
So what I say is, instead of teaching our kids to focus on the old what or the how, we need to focus on those feelings. So, and the more that we uncover and become clear on these core feelings and allow them to be our driving force in how we move forward, the more we open ourselves up to the infinite number of ways that can manifest in our lives. Doesn't mean you won't be a doctor. It's possible that path still unfolds for you. But the difference is that you're going to actually show up at that day where you become that doctor, and you're actually going to feel what it is that you want to feel. Mm-hmm. And you're actually going to be passionate about what it is that you're actually doing. And as a result, you're going to be doing it at a much higher level. You're not going to be eventually then resenting what it is that you're doing because you spent all this time getting to where you think you wanted to be, and you're not actually there. So I truly believe the formula to living a purposeful life is uncovering what our core feelings are. Mm-hmm. Daniel Laporte has created something called the desire map, and it's really like a very similar process in which you're uncovering your core desires. And you allow those desires and you allow those feelings to be the driving force in the direction in which you're going. Mm-hmm. And I really do believe that it's like you might still be a doctor, but you might actually realize that the feeling of helping people is really what you want to do, and that there's a million different ways that you can satisfy that feeling.
Fantastic. I like that.
That's taught in every single classroom.
I like that. I mean, it's very similar to, in a slightly different way. Again, you know, there's so many variations of what you do. They just got different names and different questions and different processes, but it's basically the same idea. I use a process that was developed by Dr. John DeMartini. It's a value determination process. And basically it asks you questions about what your life actually demonstrates. So, like, what are you doing right now that's fulfilling you? What is it that you spend time on? What is it that you spend energy on that actually energizes you, that gets you going, that gets you inspired or stimulated? And if you can answer those, I mean, there's about 12 to 13 questions. If you can answer all those questions quite clearly, you get a clear idea of what your values are, what's most important to you to what's least important to you. And when you structure your life around your values, which is kind of structuring your life around what makes you feel fulfilled or happy or whatever it might be that you work with, ultimately you're going to be on purpose constantly. So that's great advice. Thank you for sharing that, because it really resonates with the stuff that I do, just in a different way.
I always teach it to the kids by using the example of an iceberg, and I always draw out the iceberg. And, I always say that, and it's very interesting, and at least, most of them will already know this fact, that the part of the iceberg that we see that's above the surface, it really only equates to 1/3 of the mass of that iceberg. Mm-hmm. But 2/3 of the mass of that iceberg is hidden beneath the surface. It's underneath the water. And so when we focus the majority of our attention in our lives on just what we see, on just what's above the surface, and what's above the surface is exactly what I just defined. It's the job, it's the career, it's the education, it's the physical material possessions, it's the relationships, it's the family. Mm-hmm. Then what's happening is that we're only focusing on 1/3 of what's possible. We're only focusing on 1/3 of what our lives will actually equate to.
That's right.
But when we go beneath the surface and we really uncover what's there, then we're untapping and we're opening ourselves up to the full capacity of what's possible.
Absolutely. It kind of creates this limitless possibility or endless degree of possibility.
Exactly. And, I think one of the issues that I see with the education system is that I believe that our society as a whole has evolved to a place and our education system has not caught up. So, for example, like now we're in a day and age where you could probably create a successful business, in 3 months or less online and make more money than you will going and get an education for 8 years.
That's right.
So we're not teaching our kids to be in that limitless mindset. We're teaching them, oh, you're good at this. Oh, you like this. Here's 5 ideal paths that you need to follow. And for me, it's ludicrous because it's like 5 paths, and those 5 paths are ancient. They're ancient, and quite frankly, this is what's getting us into the problem in the first place, where we're having so many kids go through college and university and coming out and not having any jobs available for them.
That's right.
Why do you think that's the case? Because we're all recommending they go down the same paths.
That's right. It's very much that industrialized model that the education system was developed around.
Exactly. And we've evolved way past that. And so our education has to catch up.
Yeah, the way kids are learning, or the way people are learning now, is much more organic. So it needs to be catered that way. So it's great that you're doing that kind of work. My final question: how do you teach parents, teachers, and I guess other childcare workers, other people that work with kids? How do you teach them to assist kids to become inspired and empowered?
First and foremost, live the empowered version of themselves.
Right.
Okay, and that goes so it's a simple concept,
sure.
but it's so untapped and goes so unnoticed, because I find working with the teachers, with the parents, with the childcare workers, with anybody who works with youth, they always want to focus on youth. They always want to focus on what the youth are going through, what their challenges are. How can I help them more? And they're not focusing on enough on, firstly, how they can help themselves. Mm-hmm. How they can build themselves to be to a level where they can even just show up more fully for them.
Right.
Let alone, are they actually showing up in a way for these kids that they want their kids to emulate? Mm-hmm. Because really, talk is cheap, and our actions are way, way way more influential than our words. So the biggest thing that I always talk about to teachers, parents, and youth workers is really focus on how can you get into a place where you can live a more empowered life yourself. You know, it's rooted in self-worth and self-love, but then it's also rooted in how you can put that into action.
Sure.
So here's a practical tip, okay? Write down all of the things that you want to see from your kids. All of the behaviors, all of the actions, all of the ideals, all of what they represent, all the things that you want them to be for this world. Same thing for your students in your classroom. Same thing for the kids that you're working with in these agencies that you work with. I want you to create a manifesto for what you want these kids' lives to look like. And then I want you to take that and put it in the mirror, and I want you to look at yourself, and I want you to ask yourself if you are living each and every one of those things on that manifesto. And if you become a living force of that manifesto, then that is the greatest and most powerful way that you are going to influence this child in a positive way. It's through your actions. And then when it comes down to the nitty-gritty and the details of like the different ways that you can communicate with them and the different ways that you can interact with them, and there's a whole bunch of tips on that I can give. Maybe we can do that in our next interview. But you can't get to that point authentically unless you're already living it.
Absolutely.
It's insignificant. I could give all of these different tips, but the kids will see through it. They'll see through it if you're not authentically living it yourself.
Absolutely. I'm just going to quickly add, because I know we're running out of time, but when I used to work as a chiropractor, and I used to work with kids quite a bit, their parents would come in. I used to do a lot of applied kinesiology type work, a lot of mind-based work, but accessing it through the body. And their parents would come in and they'd say, you need to fix my child is this, my child is that, my child's got problems. And one thing that I always do, which is something you've just said, which I totally agree with, is I used to ask the parents, well, your child's reflecting something in you. So I want to know what's going on in you, because that is probably going to help fix your child. Because your child probably doesn't need to be fixed. Your child's just mirroring your behavior because that's all it's learning right now. It started off as a blank slate. You have a whole bunch of baggage, and you're obviously not enjoying what you're seeing. You're trying to avoid it by trying to fix the problem. But the problem really, or the challenge, is within you, and if you really take a hard look and go and sort that out, there's a high likelihood that your child won't manifest that anymore. So I do a lot of reflection work with the clients that I work with, but I also, with regards to kids and parents and teachers and things like that, I also get them to do similar types of processes to you, again in a different way, where they look at their own values. They understand who they are first, because you can't teach a child anything if you're not in the same space that you want the child to be in. Like you can't teach them anything, because then you're not being authentic with the child. Like you said, children can see through everything and anything. So that's great advice, and I love the tip. Yeah, I might even do that actually. So and see if there's some things that I need to kind of work on within myself. And
you know what? To be honest with you, there always will be. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we're emulating everything that we want to see in other people on a daily basis. But it's always good to continue to check in, you know, because if something's not flowing in some area of your life, it's a great practice to take a look at and say, you know, maybe I'm not, you know, emulating, maybe I'm not living from this space as much as I could be. And it's a great reminder for us to really get back on track.
Great. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your insights and for taking the time to answer my questions about, I guess, what you're doing to empower young kids or even teens. It totally resonates with what I'm doing, with where I come from, and what I practice. And it's really it's kind of inspiring to listen to pieces of your story and to see how far you've come at such a young age, which is also, I guess, the reason why I wanted to showcase what you're doing, just to show that, you know, younger people can make things happen in this space. So I really look forward to sharing more of what you do in all your work with the community, and I would be honored to invite you to be a part of the Be Who You Want to Be community of visionaries, if that's something you'd be interested in doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pleasure to be a part of it.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to our next interview, which hopefully we'll be able to expand on some of the things we spoke about today.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.